guys, Christy here, bridging the gap between parents and schools and administration. Thanks for tuning in. I'm sitting here with Hawley High School's principal and assistant principal, Miss Grisham and Miss Stapp. We're here to answer your questions, the ones that you've sent in. Again, we need your questions. Send in your questions because I can't do this without you. I have one child, not all of your children, and I can only think of so much conversation to have. But Miss Grisham, tell us about a little bit about yourself, how long you've been here, and what being a principal at Hawley means to you.
I have been here, high school principal. I've been I've been here for 18 years. First 5 years, I was the middle school principal, and then I've been here, the high school principal since then. And like I said, for 18 years, and it has just kind of become home for me. And everything. I've seen so many kids. The ones that I had in middle school now, of course, are big and grown up, and they come back and visit. And it's just I love them, and it's like I said, it's just kind of become home for me. So.
And Miss Stapp, how about you? How long have you been?
I've been here. This is completing my 7th year here, and I absolutely love being here. I love this district. I love all these kids.
Awesome. Well, we'll dive right in. We'll start with this parent one first. In high school, the curriculum. What curriculum is there? A curriculum for sex ed anymore?
There is not really a just set aside curriculum for sex ed. We used to teach that with our health, incorporated into our health class and everything. We do not teach health up here at high school anymore. And so, when they get to high school, there are so many diverse needs in that area and everything else. And so when it comes up, because it does come up and everything else, we deal with it on a, case by case basis and stuff. And if parents need to be contacted, we contact parents in that case. The counselor, sometimes gets involved in it, and we just really kind of have those talks and give resources if needed and everything.
So are there assemblies or any? What was the drug? The when they would come in, the officers that they would come in and do a presentation about drugs and about sex, and I mean, at some schools hand out condoms and things. So, is there anything like that here at Hawley?
We have not done that in quite a while, actually, and things like that. And we've never done the hand out the condom thing, and stuff like that, because that is such a controversial, personal, thing and stuff like that. When it comes to parents and students and things, and just sex ed in general is, has really I don't even want to say taboo thing, but I mean, it really, is, because there are some parents who are very open and, about it, talk about it. And there are some that are like, I don't want you to talk to my kid, about that stuff. It's, none of your concern and things like that. So because of the controversial kind of taboo, that's why we've kind of up here at high school, on an individual basis, as things come up, we have kids come to us and ask, some questions about it. And we're always as open and honest as we can about it. And then, if it just comes up from other people, we deal with it at that time. But, as that whole like assembly, catching everybody, we don't do that anymore and stuff.
So was it the school's decision to drop a health class, or is that something that's standard?
It was something that we had, they had told us to teach and everything else and stuff, and took it out of that must have anymore and stuff. And with all of the other classes that we have, brought in, it was just one of those decisions we decided to, to take it out and everything. So,
because a lot of people want to have they want to and should. Yeah, we should teach our kids about sex ed,
absolutely.
Because it's what's important to us as parents.
Personally, I agree with that. Yes,
right. I agree with that too. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about, so what does a typical day look like for you as principal? And then we'll go to you as assistant principal.
Oh my goodness. Day. I was about to say, it's a, it changes so very much. And depending on the time of year, and everything, we get the day started, and, we're out in the hallways, with the kids saying good morning and everything else. And, it depends on if it's a testing day or if it's a day where, like this time of year, half the school's gone because they're at, golf or tennis or softball or baseball or, academic UIL or, or whatever else and stuff. But it's, just being out there and saying hi to the kids and, because a lot of times when you're out in the hallway, when they first come in the morning, you kind of know their demeanor and you can kind of tell, one comes through that's usually all, chipper and everything else. And then they come through and you're like, that's one I may have to watch, today, just, whatever reason, to keep an explosion from happening, or just check on them to see if they're okay,
Right.
and stuff. Cause you get to know the kids and their personalities and things like that. And a lot of times you can just tell first thing in the morning,
What
how,
kind of
how
day it's
that
gonna
day
be.
it's going to be, and stuff like that. So, that's how the day goes. And, we're out there in between passing periods, and just kind of, seeing how that goes, and, walking up and down and checking with the teachers and stuff like that, just kind of gauge kind of, how the day's going to go. And it can change from morning to, afternoon and everything. You never know. So.
Yeah. So that sounds like a great day,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know about a typical day. So what are the interruptions that keep you from?
So on a typical day, I mean, we just have things we do
Yes.
walkthroughs with teachers all the times. We're in classrooms. We like to be visible, for the kids and for the teachers. And so we go into the classrooms, we go into the hallways. I'm always checking on, especially right now at this time of year, attendance, calling kids in to talk to them about their attendance, to make sure that they're in, where they're supposed to be on that. We have things can interrupt us all the time, whether it's, an emergency, if our thing goes off for an emergency, or if we have to go handle, I'm handling discipline issues all the time. Um, Throughout the day, you can just have little things. Just going and doing anything a teacher needs you to do if they call you to their classroom. Um, but, and like, today, like, we're going to a softball playoff game, and we're doing, so we're just always, it's just go, go, go all the time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, typical day, trying to be, getting in the classrooms, being visible for kids, you know, calling about attendance, getting all that taken care of. ARDs, can be things that we have throughout the day, admin meetings. It's just kind of, it varies day to day, but it's a typical day.
So there's a lot of stuff that you guys do behind the desk, though.
Mhm.
So with so much interaction in classrooms and in front of kids, when do you get your desk work done?
And again, that varies.
Mhm.
There are some days where we're able to come and sit down and get that, desk work, the computer stuff, things documented and things like that. And then there are some days where, we've had a kid that has an issue, or a teacher that has had, an issue, or anything else like that, and we have to be very flexible, in that. And sometimes that means, staying after school and working and getting that in when everybody's gone. I've had to do that, quite a bit, and everything else. And when you're doing this job, or even in the classroom, or anyway, I mean, the key is flexibility, because you can have your day set in stone, thinking it's set in stone on the calendar.
Anytime we do that, it always blows
And that's
up.
really anything, not just here,
Yeah.
but, something happens, and it can be something just menial and little that's really no big deal, or something, really big and everything. And it's just that flexibility and working together, and I will have to say, up here at the high school, especially, because that's where we live and stuff, we're really good about being flexible and working with each other. And I know Miss Stapp and I read each other very well, and can tell what's going on. Do you need some help, and things like that. So we work very well off each other. So.
And it's also a good thing to kind of realize, what we're doing. We're not behind our desks. I'll have kids come in and be like, "Oh, you weren't in your office," like,
Yes.
because I'm doing something all the time.
Sure.
And so it's kind of important too that parents, like, if we get an email from a parent,
Mhm.
we may not be able to answer it in an hour.
Mhm.
We may not be able to answer it that morning or that day. Like, it just kind of depends, because sometimes I don't come sit down at my desk until maybe 2 o'clock, and I've got an email from 8:30 that morning. And it's just one of those things, because it's just been a day. And so sometimes it's not that we're not trying to communicate. It's just that there's a
Sure.
lot of things going on.
Well,
So
and that's what I was getting at too.
Yeah.
So whenever you're so hands-on with the students, that makes for long days for you,
Yeah.
because you have to return those emails.
Mhm.
So you end up working how many hours a day?
It varies. If we've got sports after school, sometimes we're here from 7
Yeah, I
o'clock
was
in the
here.
morning till 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tuesday was
And so
8:45.
sometimes it may be that next morning that emails are,
Mhm.
replied when we get here at 7 o'clock, because if you get here early enough, I try to get here early enough to give me a little bit of time before school starts in the morning to have a little bit of sit down behind my desk time. That if I missed something the day before, I can, catch up with that.
Sure.
Sometimes something happens and it doesn't, but what we try within, the first 24 hours to get things replied back, and everything else and stuff. So I know that is a frustration that some have that, that we just have all the time in the world to, answer things, and it's not,
Sure.
doesn't happen.
And let's be real, like if a parent has an issue getting an email back, let's schedule an appointment. Come sit down with you guys. Like it wasn't.
Oh, absolutely.
The only hard part about us getting together is just trying to chisel out because we know it's going to be more than a 30-minute sit down.
Yes.
It's chiseling out time. But if we're intentional about it on both sides,
absolutely.
Come and talk.
Absolutely.
Come and talk.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the most time-consuming responsibilities that parents might not realize? We kind of just touched on that y'all have.
All the extracurriculars is one of the biggest things. I mean, and we get to we divide that up. There's some things we both go to, but if you just think about just for an example, Tuesday was baseball, today is softball, maybe tomorrow softball. Hopefully we get it done today. Saturday baseball, Monday band concert. It's just there's always but I love seeing all the kids do all the different things and
and they love to see us, our faces, there
at the things they love doing.
Stuff. And I was going to ask, what's important about y'all being there? Do y'all have to be there as staff, or is it
at home events? Yes, you've got to have an admin in case something happens. A parent or whatever, or So we always make sure that there's an admin at least home games and stuff, and we try to make as many out of town games and as we can, and a lot of that is that the kids it's important for them to see us there, and everything, whether it's a game or a band concert or one act play or whatever it is, that they love it when they see one of the administrators there, and everything else. So we try to make it to you can't do everything, but we try to make it to as many of those as we can, just because we know it's important for the kids.
So is it inappropriate for a parent to approach you at an event and talk about something at school?
We really prefer not to do that. And some casual conversation. I love having casual conversation with the parents and stuff. But if it's something that is
an issue,
an issue, I would prefer that to be an office thing. Come set an appointment up at the office and do that, because we're there to watch the kids. We want to do that and watch the kids and their ears everywhere too that don't need to hear that conversation. Now, if we're just having a conversation, I love to sit by parents and have those conversations, and we're just chit-chatting about their kids and, about what's going on. That's perfectly fine. I don't want parents to think we're unapproachable when we're at games and stuff. Come talk to us.
Yeah. Or but if it's just a general question.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just come, what time is the band concert on Monday night or whatever. Yeah. Certainly come up to us. But if it's something that needs to be addressed that, they think didn't happen or did happen or whatever else, that would be a preference of a sit down, meeting at school and stuff.
Good. Like it's okay to say, hey, we need to get together because we need to talk about an issue.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
But not.
Yeah.
Good. So what are the hardest decisions you guys have to make on a regular basis?
A lot of times, discipline is hard to make decisions on. And we have, code of conduct, and you have those kinds of things, but there are other, rules and stuff with other populations of kids that you have to, take into consideration that parents a lot of times don't realize and don't, and they don't know. They really, they don't know, and they really, and I don't want to say can't know, but when it comes to different populations of kids and stuff like that, we fight that quite a bit when it comes to discipline, because not all discipline is the same. I mean, it's really not, and it depends on the population of kid that you're in and dealing with, as to what you might have to do with that kid and stuff. And so that's a kind of a contention with parents sometimes, as well, my kid got this. Well, I know, but anyways, we try to make it as, equal, but sometimes it's just not, the same sometimes. And that's a difficult decision that we have to make and everything when it comes to some of that stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely discipline. There's always hard decisions we have to make. for things when it comes to like attendance and credit
Yes.
and things like that. Those are always difficult decisions we have to make at the end of the year.
So is there, but that's kind of standard because there's I mean, it's a hard line between how many credit hours you have to graduate. So, yeah, it's hard to tell them.
No, it's absolutely hard, and it really is, because you have those, the state of Texas says that, the kids can't miss more than, 10% of the school of their school day. And it's different at high school than it is at the elementary, middle school, because we have 8 periods a day we deal with, it down
And
at the
every
other
period is
so they
attendance.
cannot get credit for first period, but they can get credit for the rest of their periods just because they weren't here for, first period and stuff. So, that one's a hard one, and like you said, it's really just, and it's communicating, and we communicate. Ms. Stapp is great about communicating with the kids and saying, you got to come to Saturday school. You're over on absences. And if you don't come to this many Saturday schools, you're not going to be walking, especially those seniors, you're not going to be walking that stage, at the end of the year. And everything
and see,
else.
I would think with so many extracurricular activities that these kids do, that would be attendance.
Well,
would
it's
be a bumper for them.
unexcused.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, you're saying with as many as they do.
Yeah, that would be a bumper for them to make sure that they're in class. Like it would not it would discourage.
And it is for most of them.
Yeah, most of the, and I don't want to even say athletes,
huge
those
population,
that
are involved in something, whether it be band, whether it be athletics, whether it's academic, whatever it is. If they're involved, we usually have pretty minimum problems. And then a lot of it really is first period, because they may not get here, and if they're not here within the first 10 minutes, they're counted absent. And so a lot of them, it's that they have attendance issues in first period only. The rest of the day, they might have 2 absences.
The majority of them are.
Yeah. They might have 2 absences the rest of the periods. And then first period, they might have like 16. Because
I've been curious about that, because I always see kids at ALSIPs at 8:15. And I'm like, what are you doing?
And they're counted absent.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes. And so sometimes they have to come to Saturday school for first period.
First period.
Yep. And they can, it's a possibility that they could possibly not walk the stage because of first period.
Yeah.
If they don't get it under control and things. So, but we give them plenty of time, we give them plenty of chances, plenty of time. Like I said, we've got Saturday school just about, unless it's a holiday, we have Saturday school every Saturday. And that is, one for, if it can do a whole entire day, if their absences are a whole day. If it's just first period, we can give them a couple of days, for being a whole Saturday school. We can, that could be a couple of days for just a first period class. So, most of them will come and take advantage of Saturday school and, and try to get that done and stuff. And what we have to remind them too is, one day of Saturday school can't replace 2 or 3 days. That goes negative, and everything else and stuff. And you don't want to have a 6-day school week either, all the time. So
I know everybody's begging for a 4, but they don't understand how hard
exactly.
that is too.
It is. So yeah, attendance is one that, we do fight with a lot and stuff.
So let's talk about funding, because I know we talked about how hard that was the other day. Whenever, like, is it new that they're having to pick a career path in 8th grade and stick with it to be a completer, or has that
it's
been
new-ish? It's not like new, just like right now, and things like that. We've been wanting, the state of Texas has been wanting them to pick a career path as low as the 8th grade for several years now and stuff. Now the funding part of that has really gotten tighter just in the last couple of years. They're just putting all those little caveats in there about you've got to do this and you've got to do that, and the kids have to be completers and and everything in order to get that funding. So a lot of that is it's a funding based scenario and everything else and stuff.
So let me back up, because we did talk about this off camera the other day. So we're talking about kids picking a career path in 8th grade, having to stick with that and having so many credits to be a completer in that career.
Yes.
And we talked about how 8th grade, they don't know what they want to be. So whenever they switch or they want to switch, that changes funding, because they have to complete that career path. So that's a hard decision where you know, you have to talk to a kid, and we want parents to be involved
Mhm.
in this
Absolutely.
decision making.
Absolutely.
Whenever they're picking a career
Yes.
path, because an 8th grader just wants to do something that's fun.
That's
And
yes.
yeah, that's not going to be a lot of
Mhm.
work, and a lot of thought has to go into that.
Yes.
So, to know that the funding of the school, like, I think I'm one that doesn't understand how all of the funding
Mhm.
for school works.
Yes.
That's a
It's
big,
complicated. It
yeah.
really
Oh,
is.
it's very complicated. It gets more complicated all the time.
Well, and how do you balance between the importance of funding, because you have to keep the doors open and offer an education, and the importance of what's important to that student?
And that is so hard.
Mhm.
That is so hard. And you know, and they do. I mean, and yes, they want us to, you know, have the kids pick a career path in the 8th grade. They can, you know, change up until their beginning of their sophomore year. And I say they can. They really can change just about any time. Do we want them to do that? No, we don't want them to do that, because we want them and need them to become a completer and
Mhm.
stuff. If they decide they want a different career path beginning of their sophomore year, they really could still become a completer. Beginning your sophomore year still, again, is, I mean, that's, you still got quite a few years before
Yeah.
you're going to go, you know, decide what you want to. And we have some that, you know, are definite in their decisions, and we still have some that are like, you know, I don't know,
Yeah.
and stuff. So,
I mean, forever's a long time to try to figure out.
yes,
you
no,
know?
absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, we just tried to educate the kids. And Miss Ernst, who was our CTE director, she's really good about, you know, talking with those kids about those career paths and what it takes. And so is our counselor, Miss Marburger, you know, and everything else and stuff. And it's that fine balance of, yes, you know, we want to do what's best for the kid, but we also, you know, need some of these other little boxes checked, you know, school wise and finance wise, and things like that. So it's just, like I said, lots of education of the kids and the parents.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
how can parents make that easier?
I mean, if you have questions, you know, we just got done doing it a couple of weeks ago, the 8th grade orientation, and it really wasn't orientation; it was just an informational session about the pathways that we have and what classes the kids can take during those pathways, and you know, and everything else. Because each of those pathways has an IBC, which is an industry-based certification at the end of it. That again has to do with funding and accountability, you know, and everything else and stuff. And so, you know, trying to get what the kid wants and stuff. So just if the parents have, you know, questions, feel free to, you know, and it's on our website too. They can go on to the website and look and see what all our offerings are and what all those pathways, you know, entail, and things. That's all listed on our website. And so, you know, several different resources that they can, you know, go to. And if they have a question once they get on the website and read, it's like, I just still don't get it, you know, feel free to call Miss Ernst or Miss Marburger. They are the, you know, the ones that can answer those detailed questions about those pathways and stuff. So
Good deal. Good. So what are some misconceptions parents have about your role as principal and assistant principal? Like, what have you heard the most that is the most untrue?
oh my goodness. We don't know all. You know, we don't know all. We don't have all the answers. And you know, and I know both of us are one that if we don't know the answer to something, we are definitely going to let you know. I don't know that answer, but I will get that answer for you. And that we have all the time in the world, you know, and we don't have lives outside of school, and, you know, and things like that. But, you know, we do have lives outside of school, and we do things other than school. And things like that. But, you know, and we do have the best interest of their kids at heart. And I think sometimes those must do things that the state tells us we have to do, you know, muddies the water when it comes to this, you know, that's not what's best for my kid, and stuff. So we just try to, you know, to do all that and do what's best for, you know, their kid, which sometimes doesn't seem like that's what's best. And if it's not, then we're going to tweak and go a different path and figure out, you know, what is, you know, the best and everything. So I think those are some of the biggest ones that I can think of.
Yeah, and I think too, like that, we really are just trying to build rapport with these kids, and we want the best for every single one of them. I think sometimes, in our roles, it gets viewed at as a negative thing. Like the only time it's when they're in trouble, or we call the kids in our office and they're always in trouble, or whether it be attendance or discipline or anything like that. But like I say, that's when we really try to interact with them in all the positive ways too. And even when they're in there for something like in my office with discipline or with attendance or whatever it may be, I'm telling them, I just, we can move past this. Like, let's get past it. I've had these seniors because before I was just assistant principal at the high school, I was the secondary. So I've had these seniors since 6th grade. And trust me, I'm not thinking about something that they did maybe in 7th grade and got in trouble for. Like, that's out of my breath. Like, they're totally different people
Yeah.
now. And so, like, I think it's just that I don't know if it gets viewed as we really are trying to build positive relationships with all these kids because we want them to go and be successful. And so
when a parent is frustrated and they're coming at you, what happens behind the scenes? How do you prepare for that?
Well, you got to find why. You got to find why. Until you can find that why, and because there's always that why. What's the basis of this? And until you can get to that, and sometimes that takes a little bit of digging because it's other things have just kind of gotten in the way and stuff, and then you've got to come to that realization of why is what is the contention in this, the and stuff. And so that just takes talk, sitting down and talking, and answering questions and being open and honest about it, and everything else and stuff. We have nothing to hide and everything, and a lot of times it's miscommunication and something that was misconstrued. Somebody said something or did something and it was missaid, or something like that. And I can tell you, a high percentage, I don't even know what it is, but a high percentage of times when I'm talking to parents over frustration, it's over something that was, and I don't want to say not true, but it was not, portrayed the way it actually happened. And then so once we sit down and start talking, they're like, well, I didn't realize this part of it. And I can even say sometimes, well, I didn't realize this part of it.
Right.
And then when we can get to the bottom of that and realize that, whatever went wrong in that, and figure out what's, the bottom of it and stuff, then that usually, gets, it's fixed or whatever else and stuff. But it usually starts with some misconception, or they didn't get the whole truth. And whether it be from their kid or whether it be from somebody else. And a lot of that happens is they hear something from somebody else and they're taking somebody else's word of mouth from somebody else when, they need to talk to.
And I try to be really, we both do, empathetic. If I know I have a parent coming in or a parent that's here and they're upset, I have a sophomore in high school. Like, so I know, like, when it's your kid, like, you're going to come and,
Mama bear.
Yeah. I mean, and I get it. And that's totally understandable when you think something's wrong, or if you think something has been unfairly done to your child or something like that. Like, I get it. You're going to come advocate for your kid, and they should. Like, that's your job as a parent. But so I just try to be real empathetic and listen to them and want them to know that, like, I get it and I understand, and then explain, like, and get it figured out that way. But I always just try to think, like, because how would I feel in that situation? So
that's good. So supporting your teachers, what does that look like on a daily basis for you guys? How do you support the teachers?
Just being there, listening a lot of times, because their job is very frustrating. Very frustrating. I mean, I know our job is frustrating, but theirs is frustrating on a whole different level with all of the things the state throws at them, and what they can do and what they can't do in the classroom, and getting all these teaks covered by the time the STAR test gets here, and everything else. And sometimes, and most of the time, actually, it's just sitting down and listening to them, giving advice if we need to, and everything else, and supporting them, whenever we can support a teacher, that's what we want to do. We tell them that. Don't give us a reason that we can't do that. But 99% of the time, it's a misconception if, like, a parent is upset or whatever else and they need that. But if it's just them just listening to them. I have lots of conversations, just sit down, just conversations with, and sometimes it's not even about school. They just need to come in and talk about, just whatever. And sometimes it is about school. And then again, just kind of like a parent, we just need to sit down and talk about it and see what's going on, and what started this and how can we fix it and how can we move forward in a positive way. What we consider ourselves here, at the high school, a big family and everything, and all of our staff are, so good at just having each other's backs, and everything else and stuff. But for our role, I think just sitting down and just being able to listen, to them, in whatever fashion it is one of the most important ones and stuff.
How often do you meet with teachers as a group or individually? Like, what's that accountability look like to know what they're doing and if they're staying on track?
Well, of course, we go into classrooms all the time, and
every week.
We do walkthroughs, and we do formative evaluations and summatives, and things like that. So we sit down with them and go over, their performance and everything else. And sometimes that's a little more formal process than others. When you do a walkthrough, that's just kind of, you spend 5 or 10 minutes in the classroom and you just watch, and then you also go through there and you sit down for an entire class period, and, you watch it from start to finish. And you give feedback on performance. You give them just like you do with the kids. Sometimes you give positive, what's great in the classroom and what can be worked on in the classroom. And every teacher, and even us, have things that can. I think every person everywhere, have things that can grow, and stuff like that. And if you get to that point where you don't think you need to grow anymore, then I think you need to to look a little bit, and everything. But we just sit down a lot and just have those conversations. We don't have a lot of whole group because of our coaching. We can't meet before school and we can't meet after school because there's practice before school, practice after school. But when we have those days where it's a professional development day and there's no kids on campus and stuff, that's when we have those all group meetings, and everything else and stuff. But our staff are really good within their content areas and stuff. If they've got something going on, they'll meet as a content area and go over some stuff, just with them and stuff. And if they need us in there, we definitely, can go in and do that too. But they're good about doing that, and everything. But just getting into that classroom, quite often, and being seen and know what's going on in that classroom and things like that is what we do, all the time and stuff like that. So.
Good. So what does a great partnership between parents and school look like to you?
Communication. I think it boils down to a lot of communication. And I know there are lots of negatives that go along, that we hear about communication. But I mean, we've got Remind, we've got Facebook and all kinds of the social media, stuff. And, parents are free to come up, all the time. And we, just like you do at the beginning, ask about questions and stuff like that. What we, tell the parents are more than welcome to come up and, and do those kinds of things, whether it's come up and just visit. But I just think it boils down to, communication. And we try to do that with Remind and Facebook and social media and, and things like that, and sending emails out when we need to and stuff. Is it feasible for every teacher to contact every, parent with every little incident? No, it's not. When something massive happens, yes, a teacher will email, parents and things like that. But over every single little incident, and I know we have some parents who have requested that. It just can't happen. We've got 215-ish kids here on campus, and some of these teachers have, 20 kids per, class, and they have 6 or 7 classes. And, when you can't do it. It's not feasible, and things like that. And that's where, a parent getting on and making sure they're on the parent portal and things like that. And if you're not on parent portal, then, come up here to the high school and we can help you get on parent portal.
Portal is a great thing because you can, whether it be attendance or grades, you can set it. I have, like, for my personal kids, if they make below an 80 on anything, it texts me or emails me.
Right.
And if they're tardy or if they're absent to something, it emails me. That way I'm aware for anything like that. And so parent portal is a great thing for everybody to get on.
And that way, if something does happen, then they can shoot that. I just got little Johnny made a 50 on a test, you can shoot that teacher and, an email and say, hey, what's going on with, little Johnny and his test? And, the teacher will gladly, reply back and everything else and stuff. But that's a big, huge communication piece that you can set and personalize it however you want. If you want to know just when your kid fails, we'll set it at 70 and it'll shoot you an email. If you, like you said, 80, 90, whatever, and then attendance also, if they are not at school one day, we up here at high school, we do have quite a few who, when they're gone, and, my secretary will email and the parents like, well, I didn't know they weren't at school today and stuff, especially when they drive.
Right. But if you're on the parent portal,
Yes.
it gives you a notification
it does.
when
Yes,
they miss a
absolutely.
class. And I've done that, like
Yeah.
Legacy's been counted absent. I'm like, where's Legacy? Oh,
Yes.
I got to fix that.
No, exactly.
But at a high school level, it's much more important.
Yes.
It helps you keep
Absolutely.
on
So those are just some ways that, communication with parents, can happen and stuff.
So a sender is reactive. How can you be proactive with assignments and helping your kids make sure that they stay on top of assignments? Are they on Google Classroom or anything
There's
like
a lot of
that,
the teachers that are on Google Classroom.
Mhm.
And so I just think that one thing that parents can do to help is getting on and ask your kids, hey, do you have homework tonight? Even if they are 16, 17, like just, what do you have? Well, what'd y'all do today in geometry? Okay, well, tell me about that. And y'all didn't have an assignment, and then you can get on and look, because I would say probably 75% of our teachers are on Google Classroom. And you can get on the Google Classroom. I do it all the time with my kids. You can get on and just check and see when things are due and see if they have anything. But just kind of holding them accountable at home is a big thing that will help them with their overall success up here.
And having those conversations with those kids. I mean, just because they're big kids and they're high school and some of them are about to graduate doesn't mean they still don't need mom or dad or whoever they live with to say, how'd your day go? When did you, what did you do today? And things like that and stuff. And some, parents know their kids too. And if they say, well, I didn't have anything for the last 3 days of homework. Well, and just some of that little push a little bit. But, even high school kids, they need those conversations to be had with them and stuff. So.
Well, I know we're out of time for today, so we'll call this part 1 because, we could keep talking, but we'll wait until after graduation.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely.
I know there's a lot involved with high school education.
Yes.
And I appreciate all the hours and the work y'all put in.
Thank you.
And parents, I appreciate you guys as parents.
We appreciate you very much.
Some of these kids are knuckleheads. I mean, all of our kids are knuckleheads. Yeah. We're knuckleheads.
Yes, we can all do that at some point.
Yes, but I truly believe if we all work together and we all have the best interest of raising good kids who want to learn and want to be productive members of society in all aspects.
Oh, absolutely.
Then we're doing good things.
Absolutely.
So, tune in next week. I know I will be with the middle school, and we're going to actually tour classrooms and things like that. So I appreciate you guys still sending your questions. We can always have an open line of communication with everybody here, but thanks for tuning in.